The hardest part about keeping any pet is saying goodbye. But what if there were reptiles that you didn't have to say goodbye to? Today, we're going over the top 5 longest lived reptiles you could possibly keep. My name's Adam, this is Diamond, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. This video, I want to do a little bit different because normally I do just pets, just animals I think would be good pets, and then people in the comments section, oh, well, what about this and that? So let's go over good pets that last forever and also animals that you probably shouldn't keep as pets but last even longer. Let's just get into it. I'll tell you what I mean. Number 5. Boas. I'm talking about boa imperators and boa constrictors, so Central and South American boas. Now these animals oftentimes are going to get 6 to 10 feet, sometimes even bigger if they're a really big BC, but I think that they're great pets because if you want something a little bit bigger than a ball python, something that's going to move around a little bit more, that's going to act a little bit more arborealish, that's going to be in the trees a little bit more, use height almost all the time, I think boas work really great for that. Now, in terms of their lifespan, these guys can easily surpass 30 years. So there are a lot of boas out there that are longer lived than me, that are older than I am, that were born in the 80s and still alive. Well, not a lot, because we didn't really know a lot about proper care until recently, or it wasn't as well known. And I think you're gonna see with a lot of reptiles, because a lot of reptiles do live a lot longer than mammals on average. I mean, even animals that were neglected. We've all watched the Go Herping video where he saves Rosie, who is 22 years old. I think she lived until she was 23 or 24. And this animal was with no heat, barely getting fed, dirty enclosure, just neglected, and still lived to be over 20 years old, where we used to think that boas would last 10 or 15 years max. Well, I mean, they can live over 20 in the wild, so of course, in captivity with no predation, perfect meals, supplementation if needed, vet visits, proper care, no risk of extreme weather events or flooding or famine or disease, they're gonna last longer, obviously. Now, these animals are amazing eaters. They're strong, but mostly docile. So I would recommend using caution when handling any animal that has a sharp end, like most of them do. But at the same time, if I'm going to say to someone, hey, you want something that's a little bit bigger than one of these starter snakes, I'm gonna recommend a BCI or a BCC most of the time. There's a whole care guide right here if you wanna watch it. Number 4, we already talked about them, ball pythons. Now, ball pythons, if you look at a care guide from PetSmart, it'll probably tell you that they live 15 to 20 years, something like that. No. These animals can live a very, very long time. Now, I've got some that are over 10 years old myself, so this is pretty common, pretty standard. If you keep them properly, they're gonna last a long time. Now, the longest verified life of any ball python was at the Zoo of Philadelphia Zoo, and they were 47 years old when he died. It was a male ball python. There's a female ball python at the St. Louis Zoo right now that is estimated to be 63 years old. In fact, she had eggs at 61 years, even though she hadn't seen a male in over 15 years. Parthenogenesis, that's a whole thing for another day, but it's just amazing how long these animals can live, considering we thought they died pretty young, and I think that's just because we didn't know how to take care of them properly until very, very recently. And by very, very recently, I mean in 2010, when I started researching reptiles, which one I was gonna get as my first reptile, I read that 10-gallon enclosures were perfect for ball pythons, which they're not. If you want to know what fits in a 10-gallon, I just did a video a couple weeks ago right here. It's a really fun one, but either way, ball pythons, 5 foot, something like that. Males a little bit shorter sometimes. I mean, they don't eat the best. Sometimes they'll go off food, so it's always nice to have a boa as well, right? If I feed a ball python and it doesn't eat, I just feed the boa because it's basically like a trash compactor, that animal. Franny, she's amazing. And just overall, really easy. A little bit higher humidity, right? But so are boas. The temperature isn't crazy high. They're gonna hide a lot of the time. They're pretty docile, easy to handle, lots and lots of morphs. Ball pythons are awesome. I know there's lots of memes about how ball pythons are silly goose stuff, but the people who make those memes are silly gooses, so. Quickly before we move on, I wanna say thank you to our sponsor today, Honeygain. Anyone can download and run Honeygain in the background of their iOS or Android system, or even on their desktop, and earn money when they do it. So once activated, Honeygain securely uses and shares your internet connection, and it never gives access to your personal data. By using your internet connection to gather bits of information that are publicly available anyway, you help businesses compare prices and collect information, and that helps drive internet statistics. Oh yeah, and the best part, you earn money for sharing your internet connection. And right now, if you download and register with Honeygain using code WWR, we're gonna give you $5 just for saying thanks for joining. I use Honeygain, I downloaded it, I registered, it runs in the background, I forgot it was even there, well, until it's payday. And listen, you're not gonna get rich, but you could make enough money that maybe your Spotify, YouTube Premium, Netflix accounts, anything like that might just be free from the money that you earn with Honeygain. All right, let's get back to the list. Number 3, Crocodilians. Okay, so we're moving into the territory of things I would not recommend keeping as pets. Even small ones, even dwarf caimans, which can live up to 60 years, it's still a 4-foot animal with razors in its face, like sharp face. I would not recommend this in any way, shape, or form for the average keeper. If you're the 1% of 1% that can have, say, I don't know, a couple thousand gallons of an enclosure that's gonna be basically your entire basement, and you can care for them properly, and you're safe, and you know what you're doing, that's different. But just in general, I think that they're cool, which is why I wanted to bring them up. And even things like American alligators, again, terrible pets for most people. I know Snake Discovery has Rex, that's a totally different thing. She has an amazing enclosure, different, stunted. They usually get bigger and can last over 80 years. They're basically dinosaurs. Like, I love crocodilians. And then there's things like Nile crocodiles. There's one that was estimated to be 117 years old. And these things, they're, I guess, guessing that can live over 100 years. It's really difficult to say because we weren't really keeping records 100 years ago, fly in my ear, about these animals. So we're just kind of guessing most of the time, but any animal that lives close to 100 years is pretty wild. Crocodiles are just amazing. I would love to do a full episode on them. If you want, put it in the comment section below. I'd love to go to Florida and talk about them for sure. Number 2, something that would be a good pet, but you're not allowed to have, Tuataras. Now, if you don't know what a Tuatara is, hold on to your seat, I'm gonna blow your mind. This is not a lizard. It's also not a snake. It is a living fossil. There is nothing like Tuataras. They split off on the evolution in comparison to snakes and lizards forever ago. And there used to be similar animals, but all of them are extinct. The only one that we know of is the Tuatara, and it lives in a weird place. It lives on New Zealand because New Zealand doesn't have snakes. They do have lizards, but there are no native snakes there. So it's kind of interesting how something that's so crazy unique is in a place where there's very limited diversity of reptiles in the first place. So they can hear, but they don't have external ears like most lizards do. They do have movable eyelids, which is something that is a lizard trait. I mean, not if you're a gecko, but no snakes have movable eyelids. Now, these guys are from a very cool climate. They have a slow metabolism, and that's why the longest verified Tuatara was 111 years old. Crazy. So these animals are often thought to live over 100 years. The problem is not many of them do because of the things that are, well, destroying their habitat, including animals and just humans. So yeah, they're threatened. They're not technically endangered yet, but they are vulnerable on the threatened list. So we need to do something, right? And we do have captive breeding projects, and New Zealand does not ship them out, and there's really no way to get one in captivity, and that's probably a good thing. I mean, we do need captive breeding because without it, these animals will likely go extinct. They're just so unique and so cool, and no, you can't keep them as a pet, but I wanted to bring them up anyway, just because they're so amazing. There's nothing like Tuataras. They have 2 rows of top teeth. I would love to see one in person. I would love to see one in the wild. That would be like a bucket list for any reptile nerd, but either way, Tuataras are on the list. Okay, let's get back to something you could actually keep in captivity, and most of us do, including me. Number 1, tortoises. Now, I could include turtles too, because alligator snapping turtles often live 60, 70 years, but let's talk about tortoises because they're the most impressive on the list. Wow. These animals, if you get a giant one, like an Aldabra, which again, probably not the best pet, we'll get into better pets soon. These guys are huge, they're massive animals, right, from the Galapagos Islands. And these animals can live 200 years plus. There are some that have been around for longer than pictures were a thing. So there are some animals, some of these Aldabras, even Galapagos tortoises, that if they were a baby, we were around, but we didn't have anything to take a picture of them with. That's how old they are. We're talking about pre-flight, pre-Facebook. That's so weird that we use that now. How old am I? Even things like sulcata tortoises, often 70 plus years old. Now these are big too. If you want something more realistic, maybe a redfoot, cherryhead, yellowfoot, whatever, all kind of the same sort of idea, though that's what I keep. These are amazing animals and they can live over 50 years. So I've got animals that are about 5 or 6, let's say 10, because I don't actually know how old they are, right? I'm 31. That means that these animals could live well into my 70s. That's crazy. I love having these animals around. They're so much fun to watch. As soon as they have an outside enclosure and they have Swiss chard planted in the front. So I'll come out and they'll hear me on the deck and they'll come running out of their hides because they know I'm gonna lift the lid, pick the Swiss chard and give it to them literally as fresh as it could possibly be. And inside, they just moved inside because it's October now and I live in Canada, and still, as soon as I walk in the room, they know they're gonna get fed. They have these little personalities. I love them. I highly recommend them, and I'm so happy that as long as I keep good care of them, I don't ever have to worry about saying goodbye to them. So there you go. What are long-lived reptiles that you really like? And what about short-lived reptiles? Should I make a video about reptiles that don't last more than 5 or 10 years? Let me know in the comment section below, and hit the like and subscribe if you don't mind. It really helps the channel. A special thanks as always to the Patreon supporters. We got new merch. You guys get discounts on that. You guys got a Patreon only vlog a couple of weeks ago. We're gonna do more of those. And a whole bunch of new, this video you got early too. And you get to see behind the scenes stuff from Thailand, which I'm in right now or was in last week or whenever this video comes out. Either way, that's it. Because I do videos on Mondays and Thursdays, that means that I'll see you in the next one.